Hey everyone, it's Louisa Tanner Munson from Feel Good Astrology and also Spiritual Portugal. And I'm absolutely delighted because I've got Robert Jardine with me today in the studio, or not in my studio, in his own studio. But I've got the chance to interview him. And the story, as it goes, is I saw him on a different channel about a month and a half ago. Was it about a month and a half ago when you were interviewed by
Yeah,
Dr. Charlie Ward?
yeah.
I actually saw the interview and I loved it so much. And I went out to buy a book related to what Robert was talking about. And I was able to heal a condition that I'd had on and off for 30 years. And I was so blown away by it. And then when I noticed that we had a friend of a friend in common on Facebook, it just so happened that we kind of gravitated towards each other. And I was very lucky enough to get chatting with Robert and invite him on the show. So I'm really pleased to have him on. Let's bring him on in a minute, but I just want to tell you a little bit about him. So Robert, this might be a bit embarrassing, as I kind of talk about you, but it's hard, but we need to do this and I'm sure everyone will appreciate it. So what I'm getting, like, I've had a look at your website and it's talking about you having a really serious racing accident quite a while ago, and experiencing really profound difficulties which you needed to overcome, which put you onto a new path and a pathway of considering healing, and that you studied at the International College of Professional Kinesiology. You qualified through them. And it got you looking at different modalities like EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, and hypnotherapy and things like that. And all of this has kind of led Robert to the 5 biological laws, which he's going to talk about today. And now, Robert, are you a full-time practitioner working with clients? How is that?
I'm kind of full time. I've got a small holding, and myself and my partner, we've got a 18, 19-month-old child now, so that takes up a lot of time, and we're trying to develop this small holding in the north of Scotland into well, at the moment we just got a house that we rent out, but I'm going to put yurts up, and we're hoping to make it a bit of a place to come. It's a lovely place, and maybe it will keep developing into a place of healing. That's what I'd like, and my partner too. So that's the dream.
Fantastic.
Let's see it happen.
It sounds like a really good dream. So welcome
Yeah.
to the show. So you got into this really through needing to solve your own problem or your own condition.
Yeah, I found myself unconscious for over 2 weeks. And then by the time I got out of hospital and the rest of my body patched up, I had a bit of a long trek. It was a long time ago that though, but it was a long trek of self-questioning and self assessing my life and things, and coming to terms with changes that have to happen after a significant head injury. So you get your head around that, and then you start looking for answers that sort of led me on to. I initially got accepted to study osteopathy, but in that year that I had before I went to the European School of Osteopathy, I discovered kinesiology, and I thought, I actually prefer this. I'm not sure if I just want to be clicking backs the rest of my life, so I got into that, and then I went as an advanced studies in Auckland in New Zealand, and I met a guy who helped me heal my sister who had rheumatoid arthritis, and she had it really bad, and she was really inflamed, and her joints were deforming, and her life was really falling around her. So I was just told about Dr. Hammer, and I followed up on that advice. And back in 2007, there wasn't that much available in English on him, but I found something that I read a couple of times, and I thought, right, this sounds really. This guy joins the dots. He's really joined. He's given us cause and effect, and all the points in between. So I went with that, and literally I had basically one sort of conversation, one pivotal conversation with my sister, and she started to recover from that condition, and she recovered really quickly. she was on heavy medication at the time, so she stopped her methotrexate and her other anti-inflammatory drugs, and literally within a month, she had blood tests and they were back to normal again. So that to me was like, I saw it. I was lucky enough to actually experience the healing power of German new medicine.
Wow.
I've since then I've taught it. I've tried to, I've done lots of shows recently, and people find it really difficult to get, because it's so different, and people just are so attached to the old idea of the germ theory, and that there's always like something wrong when we have a symptom, even like rheumatoid arthritis, if something's wrong. But it's so people are so attached to that they identify themselves with it. And with the latest virus sort of thing that's going around, the thing, whatever you want to call it, people are so attached. Even the non-believers think it's some kind of bioweapon, and it's there's an attachment to a concept of a virus which in reality doesn't deserve to be there. There is no virus. But when I sort of it's such a big step, so I'm hoping that this conversation we're going to have, Louisa, today is going to help people make that step, because it's like when you make that step, when you start to see the wood for the trees, the whole world opens up, and you suddenly have an opportunity to make profound changes in your own well-being and the well-being of the people that you care for. And it's why we're, it's to me, it's like the Holy Grail. I found it, and I want to tell everyone now.
Well, I mean, that's the wonderful thing, isn't it? When you find something that works, and then eyes open to this new reality, and it kind of blows you away, and you're just like, oh my goodness, it's so simple, and yet we've been told all these things that go against that. Of course you want to share it. And I would like to, I think it's amazing that you found it and it's your holy grail. And I'd love, in this interview to share this, and also to look at some of the attachments that people do have, and try and work through them, with the people. We've actually got quite a few listeners watching us already. I'd like to put a shout out to them. So big hello to everybody that's joining us today.
Hello.
We've got Jeffrey Granville, who's joining us from, is it Seattle? Is that right, Jeffrey? Are you in Seattle at the moment? Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate that. Jeffrey's another healer. He healed his son through mindfulness, which is incredible. That's a whole other story. We've also got Ian Dixon joining us. I'm not sure where you're from, Ian, but I know Ian would like to share something with you and possibly get some help. We've also got a shout out from Expats Portugal saying congratulations and good luck with the good life. So that's all very nice. So please do let us know where you're from. And also if you've got a question for Robert, because whilst we are talking and unpacking all these theories and this new German medicine idea, which you probably haven't heard about, or you might have heard similar bits from, but never been able to put it all together. Whilst Robert's sharing that, we can also start, feeding in some questions and getting some help and support. There's nothing worse, is there, Robert? When you feel absolutely at your wit's end, you're feeling less than what you normally feel. You don't have the energy, or you've got symptoms, and you feel like there's nothing you can do. There's nothing worse than that. So I'm really grateful that you're here today. So it was 15 years ago then that you came across Dr. Hammer's work. I worked it out, 2007. If my
I thought that was too much, but how time flies. My God.
Yeah, 15 years is a long time. And so you're saying, like, the old idea, that the idea that everyone has is this germ theory. And you've learned that there's this new theory, based on Dr. Hammer's work. So I understand that there's 5 biological laws is it for healing or for the body? I can't remember how to.
Okay. So Dr. Hammer's work, he was able to define 5 biological laws which are at play in every and all cases of disease.
Okay.
Everything except physical injury or severe poisoning or severe starvation. So, and even with starvation, these mechanisms come into play, but there are other mechanisms. But out with those three things, these 5 biological laws are at play and controlling the body to create all symptoms. And these symptoms are given names in medical dictionaries, which range from candida to cancer.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so his laws really just tell us what the body's doing and why. And it's like giving us a compass, because if we suddenly know why the body's doing something, it gives us options. The worst thing in the world if you're unwell is to not know and not have control. Those two things are devastating. If you don't know
Yeah.
what's caused it or what to do, and you don't feel any control over the situation, you've got no way forward. You're just vulnerable.
Yeah.
But what Dr. Hammer's work does is we suddenly know if we have a symptom, all we need to do is identify that symptom, and then from then on you can work back through your biology to why the body's doing it, and then you just got to track your symptom back to when it started, and you can work out then what's caused it. And all of a
Brilliant.
sudden you've then got something practical to do that will change your symptoms for the better.
Yes.
So
Now,
it's incredible.
before we go any further, I just want to put this particular banner up just so everybody knows. This is just to cover yourself and me. This interview is for educational and presentation purposes only. All views expressed are opinions. That's just to, I guess, to cover us, so we don't have people saying, "Oh, I'm a doctor." Woo. But what I heard when you were talking on the Charlie Ward show was that there are these 5 biological laws that you're going to go through in a minute, and the other thing that is a key component of these illnesses or diseases arriving and manifesting is a trauma or a shock. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So my understanding, and I'm going to kind of put it in real layman's terms and then feed it back to you if it's okay.
Yeah.
My understanding is that we go through our lives and we each experience shocks or traumas to our system at certain times, just as we go through life. That's kind of what happens. And when we experience a shock or a trauma, it's registered somewhere in our brain as a special event. Is that right? What do you call those events?
Well, what happens is we have a conscious mind which deals with stuff in life. Okay, so somebody knocks on the door just now, I'll tell them to go away because I'm busy, right? Or something like that. Right? We deal with stuff, right? The conscious mind deals with it. But if something happens that is significant to our biological well-being, right, and we're not prepared for it, it catches us on the wrong foot.
Yes.
And if it is significant to us, or specifically if it's significant to our biological brain, which is known as the psyche. So if the psyche feels that this event, which was totally unexpected by the conscious mind, is kind of slipped completely past the conscious mind, and the biological brain or the psyche absorbs that shock, and in that instant of a second, the psyche gives it sort of judges the theme of that shock from the sensory inputs that we have from our senses.
Yep.
And it creates a reaction in a certain part of the brain, which starts an adaptive process in an effort to cope with that shock that's arrived in your life. So it's like instantly the biological brain, it's like a goalkeeper sitting for a penalty, right? And the goalkeeper's like the conscious mind, and all of a sudden his mate speaks to him, right? And he looks around at his friend, and then the ball comes right at him, and he's just got no time. It's just like he's left on the wrong foot, and he misses that. He doesn't catch it. So the ball hits the back of the net. Poof, and it's the back of the net is the psyche. It just catches that shock. And in that instant, the psyche decides what it thinks that shock is, and it starts a biological adaptive process to help us biologically cope with what it thought that shock was in that moment.
Right. Excellent.
Right. So it's just like an instant action. It takes like fractions of a second to do it. And when it does it, if you do a CT scan of somebody's brain, you can see the part of the brain that the psyche processed the shock in. It's like a almost invisibly faint ring in the brain. It takes ages to tune your eyes into seeing these things, but when you see them, you can't not see them. And it's like this very, very infinitely fine little ring in a certain brain relay, because our brain is made up of hundreds of relays, and each one is programmed with this survival reaction. So when the psyche goes, let's say it's an indigestible anger issue, bang, all of a sudden that little ring formation will appear in the brainstem. And from that moment on, your brainstem, your psyche, and your biology are linked to that issue. They're literally linked to that issue, and that issue controls your biology through your brain.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So I tell you, for example, so then we don't look at, so then you say you've got inflammatory bowel disorder. You think, oh, my diet, or is it instead of, it stops you looking at all these things, because all of a sudden, that that part of your bowel is linked to a life issue. So the job is to find the issue and fix it.
Yes.
It's that simple. And everything else is just a process that helps us get there. But that is really the bottom line with almost every disease.
Yes. Well, I mean, there's a whole bunch of people who have said for a really long time that our emotions create disease. In fact, I've got
absolutely
a ton of books behind me about it.
Yeah.
I could just grab I don't even know which one to pick, but I've got a few. But hearing that, they all kind of resonate in the brain, or they start in the brain, and you can track them and then work them out, is really useful. Now, we've got quite a few really interesting questions coming up, and I'd like to come to them in a second. So I just want to say I am going to come back to you, I promise, Julie Boo and Jeff and Ian, with all the things. Oh, and hello, Chris. So we've got people from we got mainly guys actually at the moment, and we've got Julie, but we've got people from all over. So we've got them in the UK, in Portugal, Washington, Seattle. It's awesome. This is already reaching people around the world. But what I'm really keen to just quickly ask you are what are these shocks, and how do they manifest? Because you're saying indigestible anger issues or survival issues. I wouldn't mind getting a little short list of all the different types of issues that might come up, because and I'm happy to share from my own experience. I've had a lifetime of at least 30 years of difficult urine infections that either sometimes show up as an infection, sometimes they don't. I can be crippled with them. I've been in hospital twice with pyelonephritis or kidney disease, or kidney infection, sorry. And when I read the book that I've sort of found on Amazon, thanks to your prompting on the Dr. Charlie Ward show, it was saying it was a territorial survival issue. Yeah. And when I looked at, I mean, I've used homeopathy to clear them in the past, and it's mainly worked, but not always worked. It's not always got to the base of it. But from a homeopathy perspective, and from me talking with my homeopathic doctor, he was saying, well, you're really pissed off, and that's why you've been going with urine. Let's use Staphy Sagria and let's clear it that way. And a lot of these books would say you're really pissed off, but you have to think, why was I pissed off? And if indeed it was a territory or survival issue, which I now believe it is, because it's now disappeared and I haven't had a single bit of it at all. Now I'm thinking, whoa, it goes deeper than the emotion. It goes back to the brain.
Yeah. Well, the final law that Dr. Hammer was able to prove without exception, and bearing in mind that in his portfolio when he died, I believe that there was approaching 50,000 cases in it, and each of those cases were more than likely complex. So there might have been one symptom or two symptoms or more. So if you just look at the number of symptoms that he was able to plot in the brain and connect up to the body and life, right? It's phenomenal. It's, you know, at least 100,000, if not double that, right? And it's 100% correct in every case, right? So it's not been wrong at all, not once. And his final law that he is able to put down as a scientific law that is never, it's always right, okay, is that your body is, well, it can be summed up in these words: there is no such thing as disease. Okay. And what he means by that is that every symptom that you have is a symptom of your body adapting, or your mind, or your body psyche complex adapting to help you cope with a life situation. So therefore, to call it a disease is wrong. It's actually a symptom of adaptation for a life issue, real or perceived. And it's mediated through a brain relay, which has now been identified precisely with photography.
Yeah.
And you can even plot what stage the process is at by looking at the brain scan. So you can tell if that conflict is resolved or unresolved.
Yeah.
Clear as day. And so therefore, your condition, the one that you told us about, you got to ask, okay, so how was my body trying to help me, right? And it turns out that Dr. Hammer has given us that information. And with your case, it's called a territorial marking conflict. Every mammal, or I shouldn't say every mammal, but I'm thinking of, like, I live on a farm, so there's dogs about, right?
Yeah, we got chickens, we got dogs.
Yeah.
All sorts.
So the more advanced species have a territory. They mark their territory with urine. It's the way it's done.
Yeah.
So if we have a territorial marking conflict, the body says, well, I'll help you. So what it does is, when that conflict is active, do you remember I said about the goalkeeper, and he's not ready and the ball goes past him, hits the net. So the net gets activated, bang, it's a territorial marking conflict. So the body says, I'm going to help you mark your territory. To do that, it wants to widen all the tubes, is that the right word, that the urine passes through from the kidneys to when you actually leave it on the ground behind you, right? So all those tubes start to widen, and the way it widens it is that the tissue that lines these tubes ulcerates out. So it's a type of tissue called squamous cell tissue. So the squamous cells, like, disappear and make the urethra wider, more able to mark your territory. That's the objective of your body, is trying to help you mark your territory.
And that's
when
what
that
mammals
goes
do.
When that conflict goes into resolution, either temporarily, with you it would have been temporarily, you get inflammation. And that is your that's your inflammatory disorder, right? That's what it is. So while you were suffering was the healing effects of a territorial marking conflict.
Yes. And it's interesting because as I explained to you on the telephone, it resolved after I made love to my husband on several occasions. So I noticed that, when I was feeling very relaxed and we'd had a good chat and we made love, like you do. And then boom, next morning, I was in agony, hot sweats. And everything. And the funny thing is, since I've realized what was going on, and use timeline therapy on myself to get to the point of it. What I've noticed is I'm not experiencing, because I have had some territorial things happen since. I've had quite a few actually going on, and yet this hasn't happened. But what has happened is, when I feel a territory thing come up, I sit with myself, think it through, and I get a sweat. So it's like my body, and I don't know if that is what happens, but I almost kind of burn it out. That's how it feels. I don't know if that's what is going on, but it feels like I'm processing things in real time, or not having to do the behaviors that were going on before.
It could well be. I couldn't really comment on that. The tissue involved with the UTI is it wouldn't naturally cause a sweating, but there might be, it's the psyche. It's invisible, right? And when that ball goes past our conscious mind, right, it can hit one part of the net, or it can hit 4 or 5, and you don't know, you don't really know all the stuff that's going on in your body unless you had a CT scan and you got it interpreted. Then you could know for definite. But the thing is, it's all trying to help you, and my attitude is, well, then let's help us. Let's just sort the problem out for it, because that's what Dr. Hammer did. He just sorted the problem out, and lo and behold, people just got better.
Yes. So some of these other survival issues, like presumably, like lots of people have these issues all the time, like they lose a job, or they lose a home, or they break down in their relationships. Are these the kinds of shocks that have the potential to cause illness? And if so, how would they manifest, or likely manifest?
Yeah, well, any shock that creates a symptom, all shocks are not equal, right? And it's these what we call biological shocks. Now, they have qualities. The quality of a biological shock is it is completely by surprise, as shocks are, right? B, it affects us somewhat deeply. It's important to us. It's not a minor thing. And C is that we suffer it with a sense of isolation. I mean, we can be sitting with people, but it's something. It's like the shock can't be dissipated into the group. It's sort of, it hits you. It's got a significance for you that enables that shock to penetrate, and the body then tries to adapt itself to help you with that issue that's arrived in your life. So it's difficult. You can't really prepare for them. But what the power of German new medicine is that when you get them, you get a symptom. That is your body telling you what shock it had.
Yeah.
And then if you look at when you got the symptom, well, then it tells you, it can tell you when the shock happened, or you might need to do one more calculation prior to that to find out when the shock happened. Because most diseases, like your urinary tract infection, that is not when the shock happened. That's when it first goes into healing. So that's a healing symptom. So if you go looking for a shock every time you get a UTI, you're never going to find the issue. But if you go into looking at, so I have this infection after me and my partner really get together, and everything's great, the next morning I've got it. So that gives you a clue. That tells you, all right, so it's something to do with that, and that's the resolution of it every time. So you've got to go that extra step to find out what the issue is.
Absolutely. Yeah. And obviously that happened before I met him as well. An 11-year relationship before that. And in actual fact, the whole thing started when I was living at home before I even had any relationships. So
so your timeline therapy is the perfect tool.
Yeah.
You know that.
Go on. Sorry.
Well, just anything that, I mean, I always think the first place I ask people to do, right, is, I mean, as you know, you do hypnotherapy, right? We've got the conscious mind, and we've got other levels of mind which is not conscious. Well, the first thing that I suggest people do is just to say, well, okay, I would like to know from my unconscious mind, or my non-conscious mind, I'd like to slowly remember the event or the shock which is directly significant to this symptom. And I'm not going to sit and wait for it, but I'm just going to request, with a loving kind of vibe in my request, to my unconscious mind, hey, it'd be really nice if I could start remembering something about that sometime over the next couple of weeks. Just to ask that question to your own self. That I find it can be, things can just pop up into your mind that join the dots then.
Excellent. I think that's a really great way of doing it. I love the fact that you're saying, doing it with a loving mind.
Yeah.
I think that is definitely a key. I'd like to just quickly go to the chat room and welcome people and acknowledge them, because we've got quite a lot going on there. So just to acknowledge, we've got Chris from Washington State, US. Love this topic, Chris. In these times. And actually, Chris, thank you for saying that in these times, because we are going to circle back round to all of this and have a good chinwag, because, you know, Robert mentioned that these shocks are more pertinent when there's a sense of isolation. Now, let's just have a think for a moment. What's been going on for the last 18 months? We've been shocked and we've also been isolated. So I'm sure at some level, this is going to have a massive knock-on effect. So I'm hoping we can talk about that right at the end, if that's all right. We've got Ian Dixon. So he is joining us. He was from the UK. He's now living in Portugal. And he's sharing with us that I suspect my Parkinson's disease is not a disease at all. I outsurvived terminal cancer. 6 months prognosis was given to me in 2003. And you're experiencing some improvements. He's also added in, I've witnessed some Parkinson's symptoms in clients and myself during regression work. And then he's also added in interesting territorial. I've age-related need to pee at night often. After making love or some healing therapies, I go right through the night. In fact, I was actually going to say, in terms of the territorial marking urges that people have, could that also have something to do with incontinence as people get older and they feel less likely to defend their land, that their body starts peeing without them being able to control it, so that they're always marking? Because older, you know, when people, and I've had a little bit of this as well, you know, not age related, I'd say, but, you know, pregnancy related, you know, as you almost can't hold it in. Is this one of the body's ways of marking territory?
No, I don't think so. I think that's to do with the urinary sphincters. I'm not exactly sure what the conflict for that is off the top of my head, but that will be another conflict if that's, you know, the incontinence side of it, that will be related to the part of the brain which controls the smooth muscle, which is the midbrain. So it sits right on top of the brain stem. It's like a little cap on top of the brain stem, a little small part of the brain, and it controls the function of smooth muscles. So in your digestive system or and I think that sphincter is a smooth muscle on the outlet of the bladder. So that'll be a different conflict. And your man's Parkinson's he had, that's a different conflict as well. That's I think it's a feeling trapped conflict. So and what happens with Parkinson's is that we get stuck in a self-perpetuating loop, so that when every biological program has two halves to it, provided there's resolution. So, and this process can happen extremely quickly. So it doesn't take days or hours. It can happen in under a second. So with the likes of the tremors with Parkinson's and that, sometimes the tremors can also be a trigger to having Parkinson's. So it kind of becomes, but the tremors are part of the momentary healing phase of that loop. So it's almost as if the healing phase recreates the trauma of having Parkinson's, and then it just goes and keeps going around. You get the tremor. So breaking out of that, pardon?
What conflict? Like what biological conflict?
Feeling stuck. That will be a feeling stuck conflict. Right. Most conflicts relating to the striated muscles, and the striated muscles are the muscles we have conscious control over. So I'm moving my hand with striated muscles, right? So that is feeling stuck or not able to hold on to somebody or something. It's like it has a relevance to our ability to move or to ability to hold on to things. So that's the way that the person's psyche perceives the stress, and then it starts a biological process which, if it was allowed to run its course, would have at some time in our evolutionary past would have been beneficial to us. But now, as modern man, we're just left with this program in there which doesn't really help us. In fact, because we don't know about it, and we're kind of trained, you know, I don't know, there's not a nice word, but we're kind of groomed not to know about it, I would say, right? Then we misperceive a symptom like a tremor and we get frightened about it, which then traps us into a self-perpetuating feeling stuck, because you then start to feel stuck in the diagnosis. Oh, I've got
Yeah.
Parkinson's. Oh, that doesn't sound very bad.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
then more muscle relays get involved, because this all happens within the motor cortex, which is in the brain about there. So the motor cortex, just in front of the frontal cortex, you get the motor cortex. So then the more we feel stuck in this diagnosis, the more motor relays get involved, and then with Parkinson's and MS, it spreads. And the constant healing, going in and out of conflict activity, and then conflict and healing, starts to I think scarification on the axons, and therefore you start to see this sclerotic plaque or something they call it, which they sort of diagnose as a cause, but it's not that at all. That's just an inevitable consequence of this loop. It's like a record that just gets stuck and stuck and stuck and keeps going back and back and back. So,
and funnily enough, Ian Dixon shared with us, feeling trapped was the cause of my cancer. So there's obviously a theme of entrapment.
It could have been. Before I could actually totally agree with that, I would actually need to know exactly what cancer it was, and then I could tell what the biological conflict was, what the psyche suffered, which is what Dr. Hammer gives us.
Yeah. Excellent, because I mean, I'm aware that there are a multitude of different types of cancers, all originating in different parts of the body. And in fact, when I was reading the book based on Dr. Hammer's research, it mentioned the shocks and the traumas of surgery, and also I think it was in this one, or it could have been on another book I was reading actually. But when you have a biopsy, that is in itself another shock.
Yeah, an attack.
Yes. Yes. Funnily enough, when you were talking about feeling trapped, I actually know somebody who had a very serious skiing accident. And I mean, I'm not going to name him, but I'm going to phone him up after this and talk to him. But he had a very serious skiing accident and was stuck down a crevice or a crevasse or whatever they're called, you know, like that, with a broken arm or something for many hours, and didn't know if he was going to get rescued or not. And for the last, ever since I've known him, for about 12 years, has had MS and is in a wheelchair, and, you know, and is actually kind of trapped now. And about self-fulfilling prophecies, I was told when I was 16 that I had ME, or chronic fatigue syndrome, and it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, I went to an ME clinic in Wareham Hospital, where I was shown like people wheeled out on stretchers and in wheelchairs, and they said, you never get over this. This is what you've got to look forward to. Well, not quite like that, you know, and you don't think that there's anything else you can do about it. Now, Ian shared with us he had a malignant melanoma. Does that make sense to you? Or would you have something to add on that?
That's a skin cancer. I believe, my opinion, okay, because I'm talking about cancer, and that's something we have to be very careful these days, because it's illegal. It's illegal to go curing things.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, what a funny thing to, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just odd. Like,
but
doctors
I think
rewarded for every cure they made, rather than rewarded for keeping people on.
I think a melanoma is a healing symptom. So part of the 5 biological laws, the very second law that Dr. Hammer gives to us, is that every biological adaptive program, which is started when the ball hits the net, okay, when the program starts, okay, it has 2 halves, provided there's resolution to the issue. So when the issue becomes resolved, you enter the second half of the second part of the process, which is the sort of normalization process. And I think that melanoma, I think they usually show up on the second. I could be wrong there. I need to check that with my references, but it's why am I saying that? Yeah, it's squamous tissue, and it's necrosis in the active phase, and then cell augmentation during the healing phase. So that would be diagnosed in the healing phase. That usually you might see a mark on the skin, which might get diagnosed. But if you have like a cancerous lump or something growing on the skin, then that would be the second phase. So that in itself, as strangely enough, all cancers that are not adeno or adenoid cancers, everything else is a healing symptom.
Right.
So, you know, most, like 90% of all breast cancers is a healing symptom. The issue is resolved. The woman's breast swells up, becomes inflamed and red, hot. That's because it's getting better.
Mm.
The last
And
thing
so
that
if
the
we
last
left
thing a woman,
if we left
pardon?
the process, it's possible that it would rectify itself. I mean, I've heard from lots of different types of healers that we kind of go into a cancerous phase and out of it. You know, like our immune system is an active process. It's something that's happening all the time, and we are getting ourselves in and out of balance all the time. I mean, I judge things from my periods. Like when I'm menstruating, if I have lots of pain and lots of blood, to me, that's an indication that I'm out of balance, because I know when I'm really in balance, I just flow very easily, no pain, no real symptoms. So, you know, that's my time to look after myself a bit better emotionally and physically. And so if we're kind of flowing in and out of better health, that totally makes sense. We've got Jeffrey Granville saying, I love the net metaphor. So thank you for sharing that. I want to go back to Julie Boo. So Julie Boo, I don't know where you're from. I'd love to hear, but you're saying, is the cause of the type of the disease or condition related to the chakra in which it begins? From
No,
your
I don't think so. The cause of the condition is directly related to the brain. Really, the brain really controls all processes on the body. So there's no such thing as an infection of bacteria or fungi. Every bacteria in the body and every fungi in the body is under the control of the psyche, and the psyche uses. I mean, you know, these organisms were on the earth an awful long time before any living creatures other than them was on the earth. We grew up. We grew out of them, and they are part of us. And our body, our psyche specifically, uses these organisms to run the body and to especially to heal it. So these organisms actually become activated always in the second phase of the two-phase process. So like somebody who gets candida, they think, well, I've got a candida infection, right? A candida infection. But no. Let's just put the biological laws down, right? It's a shock that's caused an adaptive process, and it's got two phases. You go into the second phase of that and you get the removal of the adeno cells within the vaginal area. Okay. That needs fungi. Hence the body says, get down there and get rid of this, because I've now gone into healing over that emotional issue.
Yeah.
You see?
And you said it's an emotional shock that causes candida. What kind of emotional shocks might they be?
Candida.
Because like when I look at these books behind me, they talk about candida as being very much about sort of like self-hatred or destructive thoughts.
I think the tissue involved, I'm not sure. If I said, I'll be guessing. I know it'll be controlled by the brain stem. And I know that most of the brainstem is to do with the digestive system, which is generally focused around a thing called a morsel conflict. It could be a procreation conflict. Uterine, because the prostate and uterus are controlled from there as well. In fact, they're the bang on the center of the pons. So it'll be a procreation type conflict, right? And in the conflict active phase, there's cell proliferation of adenocells. And then in the healing phase, there is cell removal through the use of fungi and bacteria, or simple
Mhm.
bacteria called tubercular type bacteria. So
Mhm.
it's always simple bacteria or fungi work with the tissue, which is controlled by the brainstem and the cerebellum.
Mhm.
So the question for somebody who has an ongoing candida thing is, okay, and I don't want to sort of quote things if they're not bang on right. So
No,
I'm
no
not sure
problem.
exactly of the conflict, but that's the theme of it. And if you get in touch with me, we can find out exactly what that theme is, or you can buy the book that I suggest. I didn't send you a link to that, but you can send people a link to that book, which
Yeah.
will tell you
I
in
mean, I
there.
I remember you holding up a big old book, and I
Yeah,
tracked it down on Amazon, and it was like 70 euros or something. And I was thinking, oh, well, I'm not sure about that. So I bought a slightly less expensive. There were like 5 or 6. So like the 5 biological laws and skin
yeah,
disorders, 5 biological laws and bone
yeah.
and structural and things like that. But having got the one that I got, I'm now going to invest in that 70 euro
No,
one. It
why
was
don't
amazing.
you? What the best thing to do is go to that website at www.free-new-medicine.com, and you can get it for nothing.
Oh, really? Let me just
Yeah,
create a one for that one. www dot, what is it?
and then it's
Free.
free-new-medicine.com, and all you have
Sorry,
to do.
I've got a non-UK. Oh no, where's my hyphen? I've got a Portuguese. We've got a new Portuguese. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna have to type it out. A Portuguese keyboard that I can't find the hyphen on. Free hyphen. What is it?
new-medicine.com.
Okay, so I'm just going to put that on. So if you want to try and get it, the address is www.free don't write it, use it, new-medicine.com, and then you can also donate, I'm sure, if you want to. Now, Julie Boo was also sharing. I am a nurse in the US, and I see so many people with bowel issues that have many emotional issues, and it's kind of common knowledge, I think, that people have trouble letting go of their shit. They kind of hold on stuff. I mean, that might be
Yeah,
more of a new age take on it. That's a
yeah,
kind of Louise Hay take on it, and
yeah,
some of the books behind me. But I'm sure it kind of links in, because our language is formed around our experiences, isn't it? That's how we
yeah.
get next. Jeffrey has said it's an event specific biological marker, an emotional snapshot of our perception of the event. Now I'm thinking,
Yeah.
is that a question? Is an event specific biological marker an emotional snapshot of our perception of the event? So, we're having an event, and it's being kind of photocopied into our brain. Is that what it's like?
Um. Well, it's it's a shock, deeply felt, isolative shock, which has a significance to our biological well-being.
Mhm.
And in the moment it's perceived, it starts a process with a specific brain relay or multiple brain relays, because it can be perceived in the psyche can perceive one shock in 4 different ways. You can end
Yes.
up with eczema and an IBS with the same shock, right?
Mhm.
So, and I mean, the body, the way I think it, the way I make sense of this wonderful scientific work is that the body is then linked to that event, and the CT scans are the cast iron proof that the brain's involved with all disease, and the brain is controlling all disease.
Yes.
Because so the emotion is just one end of that equation. The other end of in the middle is the brain and the psyche, and on the other end is the life event as perceived, your perception of the life event.
Mhm.
And as a therapist, that gives us power, you see, because something, it's your perception of that event.
Yes.
Sometimes you can't change the event. Maybe somebody died. You can't bring her back to life to get rid of your bowel cancer,
No.
but your perception, your relationship with that shock can be changed. And
Yes.
that's where the freedom comes from. That's where we can get control back.
So what we're really coming to the sort of like crux of this is that we've got the old idea of germ theory and how disease occurs, and then we've got this new theory that actually could give us freedom. Like in from my own experience of being diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, which by the way I've recovered from completely.
Yeah,
it's not an issue. Even though I was told it was forever, it's not. The old idea that you have something and it's from a germ and you're done for, or you can treat it with antibiotics or something like that. Or there's this new theory that is you can deal with your emotions, you can learn about the shock, you can take back your power. So this is the territory that we're going into.
Yeah, and it's not a theory. It has been proven 40,000 times. Well, it really is. There is nothing theory about it. And when you know that, and when you realize that in medicine, everything, the most basic premise of medicine is the germ theory, and it's called a germ theory. It is a theory, and it is entirely and completely incorrect. So, as has been proven by Dr. Hammer's work. So, it does. It's like, for example, your chronic fatigue. Well, if you have a condition called adrenal fatigue, the conflict. Guess what? What do you think the conflict would be in having adrenal fatigue, being completely exhausted without energy? What do you think conflict would be?
I don't know. I can tell you what was going through my mind at the time, because when it flared up, I was having thoughts of paralysis. I was saying, I don't know how to proceed. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to take the next step. I don't know.
Okay.
Ad infinitum. And it was just, I just didn't know what to do. Didn't know how to proceed. And then boom, I manifest something. So what's the...
Okay.
What does German medicine say about that?
I'll tell you what the reason that life has created this within us, this potential is. The reason that life has given us this is that if you're a pack animal, okay, and you go too far in the wrong direction, you're in big danger.
Yeah.
Right? So the body says it wants to collapse you down on the ground to make you exhausted so you can stop and think, hang on, I shouldn't be here. I'm going in the wrong direction. I'm going in the wrong direction, right? So as soon as you turn your life around and go in the right direction, the adrenal fatigue fixes as quick as it came. And at the end of that fixing, your adrenal gland will actually have some extra adrenal tissue in it. Okay, so that's amazing. There is a reason. That's why Dr. Hammer was able to say that there is no disease. Chronic fatigue, or call it whatever you get diagnosed with, right, has a reason. And it's basically we're going in the wrong direction. So the body says, stop, for heaven's sake. So whatever direction you were going in, whether it was a conscious thought direction that you're just worrying yourself into heavens knows what, or whether it was a life direction or a relationship or a job, in some element of your life, you were totally going in the wrong direction, and your body just says, whoa, stop, take stock, look around, go in the right direction. And as soon as you do,
totally resonates, because that was teenage years, heading towards a Monday to Friday 9 to 5, and my body was saying, that is not for you.
That's right.
What, like, there has to be something. Like, why was I knew that wasn't a situation that was going to work for me. I knew it was going to make me unhealthy, and I was thinking, well, what else do I do? The only thing that's really sold to people at that, like 30 years ago, was 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. It's about making my own rules. That was how I got over it, but I'm sure other people have different ways in and out. Sheena's has sent us in a lovely message. I'm guessing she's related to you. Hi,
Sheena. She's a good friend of mine. Yeah, she is related to me. Yeah.
Robert has so much knowledge and helped me so much with skin rashes, separation issues. That's interesting, because I know lots of people with skin issues, and other things. Once you see how disease works, you cannot unsee it. It becomes obvious. Priceless knowledge.
Yeah, thank you, Sheena. Yeah, and It's true. It's a way of living. You know, when you get the 5 biological laws and you learn them enough, right? It takes a little bit of study to get the details in there, but all of a sudden you're just like a walking problem solver. You understand. Oh, I've got athlete's foot. Okay, what's that? Or I've got uh, whatever, or my friend's got this, da, da, da. So you can say, oh, you can suddenly start to put the symptoms together into an answer, and then we are empowered. And there's about 7.5 billion people on the planet right now who need to be empowered.
Yeah. Definitely. We've getting quite a few comments in the chat room, so I just want to go back to them, and then I'd like to talk about like the solutions, because I think this is where we're heading. Now people realize that there's an option. Let's talk about how we move forward with it. So where are we? So Julie Boo's just shared with us, she's from Florida, so we've reached a few different parts of the states. That's amazing. Thanks, Julie Boo. I'd love to know how you found us as well today, but I don't want to ask too much of you. What is going on in our bodies when we take medicine and it clears up, like an antibiotic for UTI? Is it bypassing some part of the process? That's a really interesting question, because there have been times when I've taken antibiotics, even when the doctor has said it's probably not going to work, because I'm giving it to you out of desperation, because you've got the symptoms of a UTI. What's going on? Is that are we just entertaining the mind while the body does what it does?
No, you see, remember the fourth biological law is that the psyche that is in control of all microorganisms that live within our organism. So the psyche controls the activity of bacteria and fungi. Now, a UTI, there could be, if it's deep enough, there's going to be the activity of bacteria involved with the healing process, which creates inflammation and discomfort when you urinate. Well, if you stop the healing process temporarily with antibiotics, you start to feel a bit better.
Yes.
But yeah, your body will kind of recover without the bacteria, but it wants to use bacteria to do that. So the antibiotics, there's two ways which drugs tend to make things appear to be better, and it's this: most diseases, right, which are not, happen as a result of a healing. So they're in the second phase of the two-phase process. So they're healing symptoms. So the job's done, but your body's trying to heal, and you get a temperature, and you get a sore throat, and you got sore heads, and you're sweating at night, and you think, oh my Lord, I've caught something, right? You've caught the dreaded, right? And it's not. The body's actually in healing. So if you take antibiotics, it will kill the activity of the very organisms that's doing the healing, and you will start to feel better, because healing needs increased temperature. It needs you to sweat very often. It needs you to lie down and do nothing, so it makes you very tired, and it makes you hot, right? All of these things are needed for the extra metabolic activity needed in the healing process. So if you take something that kills all the bacteria, well, yeah, you're going to start to feel a bit better, because they're not able to do the job. But the other way that medicine heals us is that it's a little bit techy, but I'll just go through it, right? We have an autonomic nervous system. It's the nervous system which controls the body unconsciously, right? It controls the organs and the tissues, and it's how the brain, it's one of the main ways that the brain regulates the body. So it's got two halves. It's like a wire going to your kettle. It's got like a blue and a white, or whatever color, whatever country you're in. It's always got two cores, if not three for Earth. But forget the Earth. Just say it's got two cores in it, right? So has the autonomic nervous system. It's got the sympathetic branch and the parasympathetic branch. Now, when we have an active conflict, as in the goalkeeper was caught off guard, the ball hit the net, the body's registered the shock, and the biological process is proceeding, This is mediated by the sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system. So the sympathetic branch is now dominant and stays dominant until the issue is resolved. If it's a significant shock, it will disturb your sleep and you'll be waking up at 3 a.m. Right? You'll not sleep. You'll be pacing the floor. You'll be waking up thinking about the issue. That's what it's for. Okay. If it's not such a significant shock, well, then it won't disturb your sleep. But nevertheless, your sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system will be mediating the processes of adaptation to help you overcome that shock. Right. When we resolve that shock, it swaps and the parasympathetic branch becomes dominant. The parasympathetic branch causes us to feel tired, to rest, to get a temperature. It facilitates everything that's needed along with the bacteria and fungi. It facilitates a natural healing process. So the parasympathetic branch, which is also called the vagatonic branch of the nervous system, the two halves, right? Well, when you take drugs, okay, let's say you've got a conflict activity of something going on, so your sympathetic branch is up there, and then you resolve the issue, so you go bang to this parasympathetic branch goes up, you start to feel sick, so you take drugs to heal this healing. Drugs force the autonomic nervous system to reverse somewhat. So basically drugs stop us healing. They stop the healing process, so you feel better, right? So if you've got a flu, which is a full-on healing process, you take a drug that your body reacts to that by under stress, so it sets the body in stress mode, which reduces the activity of the very thing that's healing your body. So you feel better, but you're not actually getting better at all. You're just reducing the symptoms of healing. Does that make sense of it?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we're going to get some more comments in here. There's quite a lot going in, actually. So, for instance, Jeffrey Granville saying, this is fascinating. It resonates with everything I practice. I think he'll probably have some more to say, because I know he talks about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. So I'm sure Jeffrey's got some more to add. Ian is also saying, oh, how does therapy work? Ian, we'll come back to that one, because I think we'll do that towards the end. He's also saying the reason for dopamine deficiency, is that new direction as well? Or we can come back to that at the end if you like.
I don't know that. I don't really answer that question. That's dopamine. No, you see, that started to get into the detail. You're looking at a symptom there, dopamine deficiency, right? Think big, right? What's causing it? If you have some imbalance that's happening with your hormones in your brain, right, or any other thing, there's a reason. So just think big. When did it start? Right. Then you have to think, is it a healing symptom or is it a conflict active symptom? If it's a healing symptom, you got to think, okay, it started when the conflict went to resolution. Whereas if it's like an adenocancer, then that started as soon as you took the shock. That's when it started to grow. That instant, it started to grow that instant. So when you took the shock, so you're looking for the thing that caused it there. But apart from that slight sort of complication, just think big, you know. I mean, and dopamine deficiency, I'm not terribly sure. It could be something to do with the anterior pituitary or something, but I would need to check that to be real. I know I'm going to be dead honest. I don't know everything. I just know what I know. I don't know about.
Well, that makes you. I think that makes you very trustworthy, because you know there are lots of chances out there that say, "Oh, that's definitely because of such and such." So I like that. Thank you very much. And Ian, you can see on the screen it says www.robert- which I was able to actually write, jardine.com. And what's your email address? Is it info@robertjardine.com?
Yeah, info@, yeah. And there's if you go to the website, if you go to the website and you're interested in having some work done with me, then just fill in the form, and I get that form delivered to my inbox, and then we take it from there.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. So Julie Booth added some more in. I'm quite liking what she's sharing with us. I love it. So if you remember, she said, I am a nurse in the US and I see so many people with bowel issues that have many emotional problems. Now, if we go down, she also shares, I've been feeling like modern medicine was doing more harm than good. So this is a nurse saying that. So I really appreciate your frankness there, Julie. I think that's amazing. And thank you for saying you were guided to me when you were looking for answers. So I'm glad you've managed to catch me live. And I really appreciate you being here. And then Julie's also added, this is the perfect conversation for me to watch. I agree that medicine does more harm than good. This makes so much sense. So, it's great to hear that, we've got someone with medical training, from a really sort of like traditional background who is also seeing the sense of that.
Yeah, it's fabulous. I'm just my heart. It makes my heart smile. It does. I just love that people get it. And just on that note, I think she said it was bowel. She sees a lot of people with bowel conditions. So
bowel issues that have
bowel issues. Yeah, it is. I mean, the general theme, which is common to a lot of the relays to do with the gastrointestinal tract, is a indigestible morsel conflict, like as if we've swallowed something into our lives that we cannot process, and it gets stuck somewhere down the system in our mind, right? In this, specifically in the pons of the brain, which is sort of in there. Okay, so it gets stuck in the pons, and the pons, it gets stuck in a specific place wherever the psyche feels is most appropriate for the digestive system, and then it can start one of 6 different processes to try and help us digest that life morsel. And they range from adenocarcinoma to bloating, right? Depending on which part of the digestive system is activated. If it's the muscles, the smooth muscles, then you're going to get bloating. If it's like the adeno cells which line the bowel, then you're going to have either a secretory type cancer growing, and a secretory type cancer are like little cauliflower buds, right? And an absorptive type of cancer, it grows like a flat skin on the inside of the intestine. The reason for the body doing that to us, because remember the 5th law is everything is trying to help us. Well, all the body's trying to do is increase the surface area that can absorb the indigestible morsel. It's beautiful sense. It's the most beautiful thing in the whole world.
So we just need the bottom of what's going on, or the roots.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and the further down the digestive tract it goes, right down to the rectum, is the more disgusting, or the more anger, the more sort of horrible, like nastiness is in the conflict. Whereas opposed to the top, if you're the duodenum or the jejunum and up here, the conflict's got a different flavor, not a good word, but a different theme to it, right? And the anger isn't so horrible and insipid, right? It's more of a kind of open, happy anger, but it's not that happy because it's giving you some condition. But and just to let everybody know, because I helped a lot of people with Crohn's disease and IBS and such, right? The symptoms of inflammation are always in the healing phase. So when the absorptive cancer, the thin extra few cells which line the duodenum, the jejunum, the ileum, right? When the
Mhm.
brain follows, because I said the body's connected to the issue. When the issue goes away for a holiday, the body goes into healing. And how does it remove this tissue? It uses our friends, the bacteria. They cause inflammation and digest that tissue away. You get inflammation. You go to the doctor, he says, oh, you got inflammatory bowel disease. Well, all he's looking at is a healing
Yeah.
symptom of a life issue.
Yeah.
And the trick to healing it is to figure out the issue and resolve that issue. And then the body will go through one more cycle it will go through one more inflammatory cycle, which is basically getting rid of the stuff once and for all. And then the issue will be digested by your mind, by your soul. And physically, your body goes through a major, episode of diarrhea, gets rid of it all, and then you're back to normal again. And that's how you cure an inflammatory bowel disorder every time.
Wow. And that just sounds so simple and beautiful. I love that. I really want to come to Fiona Worrell now. And then I think we should start wrapping up, because we've been at this for over an hour now. And I love the fact you've been giving so beautifully. So if we can talk with Fiona and then just recap quickly about the laws and the conflict and what you think might happen because of what we've been going through for these last 18 months. Is that okay with you, Robert?
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So Fiona has said, not sure if you will see the questions on Facebook. I see you now. So sorry about that. Does this include genetic disease? One of my diseases is polycystic kidney disease. Another is hyperthyroidism. I also have chronic fatigue diagnoses. Though I rarely suffer any symptoms anymore, I've been incredibly unwell in the past. The only medication I take is for the thyroid. The idea of being on it for life is unpleasant.
Well, I mean, okay, so there's a few things in that question, right?
Yeah.
Firstly, genetic diseases. I believe, from my understanding of Dr. Hammer's work, and I'm only me, right? And I've done as much research as I can. I've got time to do, right? Genetic diseases are very, very rare. Most diseases, like for example, people might say Down syndrome, or what they call Mongolism, for example, is a genetic disease. Well, Dr. Hammer has proven that it's not. Right?
Right.
And in fact, Mongolism is caused by the hearing centers in our brain. So the hearing centers are under the brain, at the bottom of the brain, and the base of the brain there. And if we have a hearing or a noise conflict, it will cause the symptoms which get given that name. And it can be rectified if the conflict is found and resolved. So even so-called genetic diseases, like my sister's rheumatoid arthritis, I mean, that's not genetic, but it was supposedly inherited, right?
Yeah.
Whereas all she inherited was the tendency to worry the way she did.
Yeah.
And that could have been a learned thing. Maybe she didn't even inherit that. But so genetic disease, I'm kind of not so hot on them. Most diseases are caused by this process. Polycystic kidney, I'm not, that's cysts on the kidney, I think. I'm not exactly sure what that is. But if it is, then that is caused definitely by this process I've explained to you today. Hypothyroidism is most definitely caused by that. And it's caused the thyroid glands in the throat. And during this phase of our evolution, when we needed to be so quick to catch a morsel or so quick to excrete a morsel out of our gullet, because we had a common gullet where the food went in and out when we were finished digesting it, in and out, the thyroid is programmed to respond that way. So in life, if we're too slow to catch the morsel in life, maybe the boyfriend, maybe the job, who knows what it is, right? Or maybe you're too slow to get rid of the morsel, like the boyfriend or the job, yeah, then the thyroid gets activated, and it goes through two phases. In the first, when the conflict's active, you have cell proliferation, which makes more thyroid tissue, which makes you quicker at grabbing the morsel or quicker at getting rid of it, right?
Yeah.
And when that goes into resolution, we have the activity of our friends, the bacteria, who remove that thyroid. But what they do is they tend to remove about 102% of it. So every time you go through that cycle, you're losing 2%.
Yeah.
And over the years, you end up with an incurable loss of the thyroid tissue. So there's no way out of that. You've basically you've spent too long in the issue, and it's been going in and out of conflict activity, removing too much tissue each time. So you end up with a permanent deficit. And I found people have great success with desiccated thyroid with that. You can actually just get dried thyroid, and that seems to be a very okay way of coping with that disease. So there you go. That's my understanding of those conditions.
Okay, so in terms of the polycystic kidney disease, is that related to what you were saying about the urine marking?
No, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but by the name, there's cysts on it. So it's going to be it's going to be some other condition, and it will be covered by Dr. Hammer's work. It's just I'm not I don't know every disease about it, but I can easily look it up. It's so if you buy that book, you buy the book, it'll tell you.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you, Fiona, for your question as well. I really appreciate that. Julie Boo has also put in, doctors prescribe medicine for everything, even when they know it's wrong. For example, someone who is obese just gets blood pressure medicine without much counseling on diet or exercise. So what we're moving towards really is this idea that real health isn't just looking at the body. It's about something very integrated. It's about everything. And it's interesting what you said about the tendency for hereditary illness, or the idea that we inherit these markers from our family and stuff. When I look astrologically with my clients, I often see family patterns, and so I can see family attitudes and family tendencies. But I'm also very aware of the idea of epigenetics, that you can turn something on by your attitude and your lifestyle, and you can also turn markers off as well. Fiona has also added in, so she just said, I'm so grateful for hearing your view on this. Funnily enough, both of these genetic conditions cannot be traced in any other family members. What's the likelihood of that? And I've never trusted what I was being told about these conditions. Yes, I've been looking at replacing my prescription with my desiccated thyroid. I fully appreciate you taking the time to give your opinion on this. Much love and thanks. Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And we've got another comment from Catherine, and then I think we should probably start wrapping up. And just recapping. So Catherine Connon, who's living in Portugal, has shared with us, in my experience, a trauma before the age of 7 can be very significant and sometimes would be the precursor of serious illness in adulthood. During treatment, different parts of the brain react. So Catherine is also a healer. So that's, from her position as a healer. Right. Thank you so much, everybody, for all your questions. Feel free to keep adding comments in. And, as we get to the end, I will share some. But for now, I'd just like to quickly recap what Robert has very generously been running through. So the 5 biological laws, then, they've come up quite a few times. But can we just quickly do them in a nutshell? So what's the first
in a nutshell? In a nutshell, okay. Everything starts with a shock.
Okay, so that's rule number 1.
That's rule 1. Rule number 2: when that shock starts, when that biological shock is activated, it starts a biological adaptive process, right?
Yeah.
It has 2 halves. The body adapts as best it can to help you cope with that shock, or with the shock situation. It's kind of a shock which starts a situation, it starts an issue that never gets resolved, right? So your body adapts to help you cope with it in a practical biological way.
And so some of those you've described, sorry to interrupt, some of those that you've described are like for an indigestible anger issue, your body inflames or swells up, your digestive tract to help you process things more easily. Or in the territorial marker thing, my urethra or ureta, however you pronounce it, gets bigger to allow me to mark my territory. So are they always related to a mammalian process? I think I've lost you. Oh no, are you still there? Oh no, Robert.
Yeah. You're waking up a little bit. Okay. You're breaking up. You're breaking there.
Yeah, I'm still here. So I'm listening to you if you can hear me.
Okay.
What's
Well, I'm only getting some.
Oh dear. Can you hear me, Robert? Oh no. I tell you what, maybe Robert will join me in a second, who knows. But if you can still hear me, I'm really, really grateful for, oh, he's gone. I'm really, really grateful for all of your comments and stuff today. So just to recap on what Robert has shared is that there's 5 biological laws. The first one is that every dis-ease starts with some form of shock. The second one is that there's this biological adaptive process that your body is going through because of the shock. So it's to help you process the kind of shock that you're going through. I can't remember what number 3 is, or 4 or 5, but I know that one of them, I might be in the right or wrong order, but one of them is that when you start healing the effects of the shock, then you get the symptoms. So as you're going into the biological adaptive process,
Hey!
I was just trying to read back from memory. I was just trying to do like 3, 4, and 5 from memory. So
Right.
what's number 3? I'm so
Right.
pleased you're back.
So the third biological law is, to sum it up, is this: depending on the content of the shock, will
Yep.
depend on whereabouts in the brain the relay is activated, right?
Yep.
And from that point, it governs what type of adaptive process happens in the body. For example, if it's in the brainstem, you will have cell augmentation, and it will be adenocells. Whereas if it's in the neocortex, right, you will have squamous cell necrosis when the conflict's active. So, and they're pretty much all like that. I mean, the motor cortex is different, but the general theme is that. So if you look at the brain scan, you instantly know, right, if it's in the neocortex, right, in the very newest part of the brain, and it's conflict active, then you've got squamous, you're going to have cell removal. There'll be some kind of ulceration process going on. And then when that goes into healing, you have the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So the whereabouts in the brain determines the biological process that then manifests in the body. So that's the third law. The fourth law is this, right? And really important is that every germ, every so-called germ, like funguses and bacteria, are actually controlled and used by our psyche to help us heal.
Wow. Yes.
Okay. That's
So
massive, right?
Like get rid of everything in our body. We've been taught to wash our hands
Everyone.
and them.
Viruses, right? The viruses, okay, viruses. Well, they are purely hypothetical. There has never been any study done where they isolate a virus and then take that virus in its isolated form and transfer the disease to a non-symptomatic person.
Yes.
That has never been done. And the reason it's never been done is because it can never be done. Because every disease has been plotted in the brain and it's nothing to do with viruses. So, they just, even if they do exist, they do no harm because they do not cause any diseases. Right? So that's the fourth law. And the fifth law, the quintessence, as Dr. Hammer called it, is this: that we can understand every disease as being an adaptive, helpful program when we look at it from the perspective of the evolutionary stage that it developed within us.
Right.
They all made perfect sense then.
Yes. Well, isn't that like that's also like our insecurities and fears and our emotional programming, because if something happens, like, you know, what Catherine Conan was sharing, you know, like if you have something happens, you know, when you're 1 or something, and it's quite serious, you may well
Yes.
develop a fear from it. And, you know, it might not be relevant when you're 40 to have a 1-year-old fear in your brain, but you can see why
Yeah.
it's happened, and you've just taken it with you. And when you process it from an adult perspective, you
Yeah.
probably let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thought, just occurred to me as you're saying that, is that emotions are part of this process, because
Yeah.
when we experience that shock, it's like two things happen in an up. Well, it's like the shock happens, bang, right, and you get the two things. The motion is created by the biological brain, and it activates the conscious mind to do something, run or
Yeah.
fight or
Yeah.
love, or
Yeah.
whatever it is, right? And at the same time that the emotion gets activated, the body gets activated down below. So you got
Mm.
this bang, and they both happen at the same time, bang, like that. And we become aware of the emotion. The emotion is to prompt us to take action to resolve the shock. So even emotions have a purpose,
Yes.
and um, sometimes healing the emotions great, but also, so some modalities, just focus on healing the emotion, but it's good to heal the issue which is causing the emotion more than just healing the emotion.
Yeah.
And one last thing I've got to say is that nature knows best, right? It's trying to help us, and it's our ignorance that is frustrating its efforts, right? That's why we get chronic conditions, because we don't resolve the issues.
Yes.
And we all have issues all of the time, and cancers come and go. There's not one person alive that's not had at least one cancer, if not half a dozen cancers in their life, right? They just come and go, come and go, come and go, right? The cells proliferate when you're angry about some issue. Like say you didn't get the promotion at work and you're really angry, and you're really angry for 6 weeks, and then you let it go, right?
Yeah.
Right, that's okay, because you could well have had a biological process coming and going in that time, and
Mm.
that's okay. It's really you've got to learn the 5 laws to stop yourself worrying about diagnosis shocks. That's the main thing, right?
Yeah,
Because
because presumably when somebody gets diagnosed with cancer, that is in itself one of these massive survival shocks that then
that's
causes.
what causes most secondary cancers, is the diagnosis of the first one. That's
Ah,
according.
and that's why in the book that I read, it said animals don't get secondary cancers.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah. Because if they go to the vets, they don't hear the vet, they don't understand the vet
Yeah,
saying, "Oh, Patch here has got cancer,"
yeah,
so he doesn't
yeah.
know to be unhappy.
Yeah,
Yes.
and what's even more beautiful is that the secondaries always have a significance, because the 5th law is everything is trying to help you. So if
Mm.
you tell a man you've got bowel cancer, you've got a big lump of bowel cancer in your bowel, well, you'll know it's a secretory type, it's cauliflower shaped size, so you'll know what type it is. I would, right? So you got this, but in that moment the guy goes, "Oh my lord, that sounds pretty bad," and his biological brain says, "Oh, I could starve." So
Right.
it's going to
Yeah.
cause liver cancer to help
Yeah.
you, to create more liver, to help you digest more goodness out of the food, because it thinks, well, not much is going to get past this bowel cancer, so I'll need a bit of liver cancer to up my absorption, or my metabolism of the food I am getting. And the most common secondary cancer by a country mile is lung cancer. And guess what? It's a
Sadly.
death fright. A
Yeah.
death fright.
Yes.
How about
Uh,
that?
Interesting that you said that a death fright comes to the lungs, because presumably the big shock that we're all going through right now, or lots
Yeah,
of us, the ones that are fearing for their lives and
yeah,
who are living in isolation and separating, and
correctly,
doing all of these different things to stop the
correct.
idea of dying, they're going through a death fright. And
No,
so,
it's not. No, they're not. They're going through what's called is a territorial fear. They
right,
fear the virus is
yeah,
going to get them or their family. They fear the virus because they watch the television, right?
yeah,
So they fear the virus. So that causes the bronchial tubes in the lungs to
mm,
widen, Because
Yeah.
what does a wolf do if it thinks that somebody's approaching its territory? What does it do?
Needs to put up a fight or run. Fight.
No, it
No.
barks. It
Oh, okay.
howls and
It howls
barks.
to
You
tell
shout,
someone
right?
to go.
That's right. That's the first line of attack. You scream and shout to frighten the predator away. So to scream and shout, you need to widen the bronchial tubes in order to expel more air through the vocal cords to make more noise. Makes you protect your territory better. So that's what's happening. We're frightened of this virus. So we have ulceration of the bronchial tubes, and we isolate ourselves. So the kidneys close up, bang, bang, and we store water. That's what causes kidney disease.
Yeah.
Isolation, right? Or existence conflict as well. So the kidneys close up, the lungs are ulcerating, and then when the lungs go temporarily into healing, the inflammation kicks off, right? The fluid floods to the lungs and you drown. And that's exactly what's going on. So in my opinion, the two worst things you could ever do is believe a single word that came out of the television and isolate yourself from anybody, especially your pack, your
Yeah.
family, your mates. Those two things are a base, in my opinion, a death sentence. So there's, and I don't say that lightly. I say that because I can prove, it's a factual, it's a logical chain of thought that comes to that decision with me, because I understand how the body works through Dr. Hammer's work.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. It's
sorry, for anyone that's listening still, because we've still got quite a few viewers, and it's amazing and I love it. And I'm so grateful to you for joining us today. But if you want to look up Dr. Hammer's work, it's not Hammer double M, it's HAMER.
And it's look up for, it's called German New Medicine. So that's what it's also called Germanische Heilkunde, which I don't know how to spell that. It's the same thing, right?
German New Medicine.
Yeah, GNM, German New Medicine. So you look up that, and there's a lot of information on Facebook. There's loads of groups. You just put in Dr. Hammer and you'll get stuff coming up. And obviously anything that's been tainted with the objectives of the disease industry is going to be very derogatory, or it's going to try and prove and make him sound like he's a madman. But the thing was, right, his hypothesis that he put forward in 1981 and has never been proven or disproven it's never been proven, it's never been disproven. They just basically went into panic when they saw that he's actually proved what makes people ill, and it's got nothing to do with germs. And what they did then was just shut him down. They tried to kill him. He's 3 or 4 attempts in his life, and he was in prison a few times, but he was a survivor, and he managed to rock on till he was about 82 or 83, and he died in exile, as a matter of fact, a broken man in exile, because he couldn't go back into Europe, because the European people, I don't know what you call them, the vested interest in Europe, made it so that he could never go back to Europe while he was alive. But the thing was, his hypothesis has never been disproven. And he actually took freedom of information. He actually took the university to court and won the case in 1986, I think it was. And there was a court order put on the university to actually prove or disprove his thesis, and they still refused until 2006, where under much pressure from, I believe it was the German government, the European law was changed to enable the university to refuse to test his thesis for some reason.
Now that makes no sense, because surely if somebody has come in with an answer, anyone that's interested in healthcare would say, sounds like a long shot, but let's give it a go.
Yeah, but it depends where you got your money invested.
Exactly. Well, I think that's amazing, and I really thank you for your time. Last comment here. Ian Dixon is saying this ties in with regression therapies like psychotherapy, and so other therapies that we could use to get to the core of things. What would you say, Robert?
Well, your timeline therapy is fantastic. Counseling, when I work with people, the first thing I do is the symptoms is the truth, that your body never lies, right? So the symptoms are the one thing that you can definitely say is true. Whether the one lady said that there might be trauma in childhood which affects later life. That's kind of true. That trauma can set us up for the next trauma, but there's always a trauma at the start of the disease, which isn't a disease, the adaptive process, right? So anything that can, anything that can get you to that place of resolving the issue, with the one caveat, and it's something that people have to be responsible with, and that is that not all diseases should be healed, because the healing process, I'll let you into a little secret that I want everybody to know. Heart attacks are a healing symptom.
Yeah.
And they kill us. So you want to avoid healing something that's going to give you a catastrophic heart attack.
Yeah.
Right? There are some other conditions as well, diabetes and such. To get through the healing curve of a diabetes conflict takes a little bit of help sometimes, depending on how bad diabetic you are. But definitely the one to watch out for, things like angina and coronary necrosis of the coronary muscles and such. These sometimes a condition, like Dr. Hammer eventually said through his own work, he said, sometimes there are conflicts that we're best to die with, because if we heal them, the healing is too traumatic for our body. And another interesting thing that he discovered was all death starts in the brain first. So if you see somebody who dies of a heart attack, the heart's nothing to do with them dying. They die because the relay in the brain almost explodes under the pressure of the fluid. So death happens in the brain, and then the heart stops. Heart attacks have got absolutely nothing to do with the heart. Well, not true, but the heart doesn't cause them. Heart attacks are caused by the brain relays, and there's three: one there, and one there. Wow. Or two up the top. They're close together. This one affects the coronary artery. This one so you get coronary artery related heart attack. This one is you get pulmonary embolisms here, and then you get the myocardial infarction up here in the motor cortex. All completely seen on the CT scan. You cannot deny it when you see it. So I have no idea why medicine refuses to see it. But what I'm saying is, as a therapist, if I'm speaking to therapists out there, please learn stuff before you start sort of randomly healing people of stuff, because sometimes the healing symptoms can be really traumatic.
Yeah. And that's a very good comment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's it, really. But apart from that, I mean, really, I'm talking about, and if somebody suffers significant angina for over 9 months, then you just want to move away from the issue that's caused it and just keep that issue going on the slow cooker. You don't want to heal that, because it's that specifically that relay in the brain, which is in the right temporal lobe, but just about where the ear is. That when that goes into the healing phase, what's called the epileptic crisis of that relay, epileptoid crisis, I should say, it does so much brain disruption that the heart can't cope with it, and you have you die of the heart attack. So therefore, doing Kiss of Life is pointless, because it's got nothing to do with, the heart's gone arrhythmia, the heart's gone all over the place to see that. I mean, if it's this one, the heart rate can actually stop. It can actually go down to 2 beats a minute, and you can live like that for 10 minutes, 2 beats a minute. Wow. And then if the brain clears, poof, you'll come back to life again, and you'll just wonder what's happened. You get diagnosed as dead. And that's why in the Middle Ages, here's a good one, here you go. In the Middle Ages, they used to bury people with their faces out of the ground, because oftentimes they'd wake up 3 or 4 days later.
Wow.
Because they were going through what's called an epileptic or epileptoid crisis. It's called the healing crisis. That's what an epileptic fit is. That's what an absence is. They're all healing crisis, right in the middle of the healing phase. And as a therapist, if somebody's got significant angina, then it's good that they just live with that, because if you heal the issue that causes that could be dangerous to their well-being. That's just a wee take home for therapists. Okay,
that's absolutely fantastic. I can't thank you enough, Robert. And
good.
that has joined us today, and for anyone that joins us later on. Like I said earlier, if anyone wants to reach Robert directly, they can go to www.robert-jardine.com, fill out a form, and Robert will be back in touch with you. And yeah, and if you want to learn about it, you can go to www.free- not actually spelt hyphen, but actually a hyphen, new-medicine.com. You can also look up the 5 biological laws and Dr. Hammer and German New Medicine to learn as much as you can. And please do really listen to that last sentiment from Robert about the heart. Just want to just put on one more time, just so that everyone is really, really, like, we're not giving you medical advice here. We are literally, this is just for educational presentation purposes only. We recommend you do your own reading and, you know, and go forth peacefully, you know, and work with life in a peaceful way. So I hope that helps. So Robert, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate the time that you've given to our audience and how you've gone through this with us. Thank you so much.
I've just loved every second. I've done about four things on the internet lately, and this is by far the best one. You know, you've been so lovely asking me questions in the audience, and it just you know, I'm here. If you want to do it again, just get back to me, because there's a lot of information in there, and I would like to put it out there so that it becomes common knowledge, because that's what's needed just now. This so-called pandemic we're living in is, in reality, is a pandemic of ignorance. Because if we understood just these 5 laws, we realize that viruses cannot exist, and therefore they would never have had the emotional leverage over us to make us believe a single word of it, because it cannot actually be true. So we need to learn this, and I hope, you know, it's not difficult. If I can do it, because I wasn't a star at school, you know, if I can do it, and everyone can do it for sure.
Excellent. Bless you so much. And yes, I would love to definitely talk to you in the future. I'd love that.
Yeah.
So thank you. Right, I've got to go, because I've actually got my own healing things going on right now, and I've got to speak with someone on the phone. So lots and lots of love to you all. God bless, and speak to you all real soon. Thanks so much for connecting with us today. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.